Hi fellow Jeep fans, I'm Joe DeYoung from Madison, Wisconsin, and I was contacted to work on a Willys L134 engine build utilizing a Allied reproduction block. And when I said yes, I kind of assumed that this would be pretty much plug and play. You know, it comes all nice and clean and you just put your stuff in it and away you go, you know, measuring along the way. And that is definitely not the case. So I wanted to make this video to educate people that may be considering the L1 or the Allied block, so that they can kind of know what they're getting into. The first thing that I noticed was that it was terribly filthy. Inside, lots of machining debris and such and so forth. So you're going to have to treat it as just a dirty old block, meaning that you're going to have to clean it very, very well. They have paint on the outside, but not very good. I assume that paint is just so that it's not rusting on their shelf while they're waiting for someone to buy it. So know that you're going to have to remove the paint. It's not hard, but if you paint over it, you're probably not going to be real happy, because it's probably just going to fall off in a short while. And also the oil gallery plugs are loose, which is not a big deal. Just you need to be aware of this. You should be pulling all the oily gallery plugs out of it anyway for cleaning. The really disappointing thing on this block was the poor casting. They got some work to do to make that a little better. It's usable, but there's some things that you're going to have to do to prevent a failure. The first thing was the inside is full of what looks like welding berries and slag. Not really sure what that's all about or why that came to be, but it's definitely there, and you're going to have to chip all those off so that you don't have them coming off later and screwing up your engine. Some come off incredibly easy, some come off harder, but you got to remove them all. The next thing was the valve chambers were not very good at all, meaning that they were very rough, heavy undercuts from, I don't know if it was a screw up in machining when they put the hardened seats in it, and just a lot of extra casting material on the inside. So they're not going to flow very well at all. I mean, granted, this is not a race motor, but this bugger needs help in that department, or you're not going to get very good performance. So I spent a significant amount of time grinding on the inside of the valve chambers to smooth all that out. Also, the valve seats for the hardened seats that are in it are not concentric when I checked them with the valve guide. So be sure to not bypass that, or you're going to have valve problems. Check it at the very minimum. I did, and found out that I needed to grind those seats. The other thing on the lower end is the rear main cap was not a particularly good fit. The sides were a bit tapered, so it was kind of just wedged in there pretty damn tight. It fits, just not particularly well. I think they can do better on that. The rear main seal. I'm a huge lip seal fan. That's what I prefer to use. And this engine is not will not accept a lip seal. They machined the groove in the rear main cap and the block too big. It's about a 1/16 too big in diameter. So a lip seal is out. You will have to use a rope seal. The other thing, which is probably not a huge deal, but a lot of the threaded holes were not threaded deep enough to use with the correct length fasteners, as called out in the service or the parts manual. So if you're a stickler like that, for me, you're going to have to tap the holes deeper. Otherwise, you're grinding off your fasteners. So it's a good thing to know all these things ahead of time before you clean it. So you do all this stuff versus it's all cleaned up and then you put something in and it's like, oh crap, like my experience. There's some good things about this block versus a old block, and that is the cam bearing bores are all correct. So they're all right within spec. So that's kind of a big plus, because the old block, the cam runs on the casting, except for the front, has a bearing in it. So that's a good thing. The cylinder bores were correct, and when I put bearings in the mains, those all came out correct as well. The block, I did pressure test the block. I was concerned when I looked at the casting how crappy it was, that hey, we might have a leak here. So I pressure tested this one. It passed. It was fine. But I suggest that you do that. It's a good policy to do. It's not that expensive, and you don't want to find out after you're all done that you got a problem. So those were my experiences with the block, but in the end it all came together. So it runs great, and I don't have any problems that I foresee. I'll start it up for you and you can hear it for yourself. And I apologize for all the jostling around here. I'll try and be as steady as I can. So go around this way, and I'm going to put on a ignition, and there you go. Okay, so here we go. So we are running at about, well, it's just under 150 degrees at the moment. And we got about, I don't know if you can see this, I don't have my glasses on, so it's hard to see, but looks like right around 18 inches of vacuum. We're idling at about 700, right around 150 degrees at the moment. And this engine is balanced. I balance all my engines that I do. It makes a huge difference. They run nice and smooth. This engine is not bolted in at all. The only thing that's sitting in is the studs for the rear mount, so that it can't go forward and destroy a perfectly good radiator. So So that's an L134 with a allied block. So in closing, just kind of pay attention to some stuff and don't expect it to be a take it out of a bag and start assembling. So again, I'm Joe DeYoung. I wish you all the best with your engine build.